Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for the Netflix miniseries, Godless. Alright, so this series dropped on Netflix November 2017, so I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, almost 2 years late, in fact. But I remember looking back at the 2018 Emmys, and when I was watching them, I knew that this one was a big award contender, took home 2 major Emmys, and I believe it took home a few minor ones in the limited series category. So I knew I had to check it out, and I've had some time this summer to kind of look back on some older series. And this is one I really wanted to tackle. This was one that was on the top of my list, and I was finally able to finish it. So the first part of this review is going to be non-spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show like me, and you're like way late on this, this will be for you, the first little bit. And then I'll let you guys know when I'm going to get into spoilers, and that'll probably be the majority, or at least the kind of second half of this video. And I'll, dive into the spoilers. I want to talk a lot about the finale episode towards the end of this review, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the series. If you have seen it, share your thoughts with the kind of spoiler section. But if you haven't seen it, let me know why you haven't checked it out yet, or why you're looking forward to it. I just love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one, because I feel like this series is a little bit underappreciated. Even at the time it came out, I really didn't hear much about it. So really like to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. And if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Growing a lot lately, and I really appreciate if you can join the kind of community that we have here. So anyways, guys, let's get into kind of the non-spoiler discussion first. And like I said, I'll give you guys a spoiler warning when I get into that. So this 7-episode miniseries is set in 1880s southwestern America and presents a familiar Western tale, yet with an interesting and intriguing kind of unique twist to the genre that makes it stand out amongst a lot of other westerns out there today. And believe me, there are a lot of westerns. One of the shows, or the more prominent western shows I can think of right now, is Yellowstone, and that one's actually been doing really, really well. I feel like there's kind of been, in the last 2 or 3 years, there hasn't been as many westerns, and I feel like most of them have been pretty good. Taylor Sheridan is behind Yellowstone, and he's came out with Sicario, and that one's really loved as well. That's a movie, right? But he is kind of, I would say, like right now in the last 2 to 3 years, kind of at the top of that genre right now in terms of television and some movies, I guess, if you will. But anyways, this one is not by Taylor Sheridan. This series is written and directed by Scott Frank. He writes and directs all 7 episodes, and it stars Jack O'Connell, Michelle Dockery, Scoot McNairy, Merritt Weaver, Thomas Brody Sangster, Jeff Daniels, Sam Waterston, and many more. And when I say many more, there are quite a few characters in this series, though some have a lot bigger roles than others, of course, like every other show. But yeah, just a really great ensemble cast overall. So throughout the 7-episode run, we follow the story of Roy Good, an outlaw on the run from his old group of criminals and outcasts, led by the infamous Frank Griffin, after he betrays them. So this is a really interesting part to the story, and this is pretty much where we start off, and this is kind of the overall premise of it. Then this story of Roy Good and Frank Griffin then brings us to the town of LaBelle, which is the victim of a horrific mining accident that resulted in all of the town's able men dying. So pretty much anyone that's able to work, so you pretty much have, the town largely populated by the widows and very young children and very old men, right? So a really horrific accident that leaves this town in a very unique but obviously adverse condition as a town, and this also leaves then the widows to have to run the town themselves and also develop, skills and responsibilities that they would not have had otherwise, right? So as the series progresses, we spend time with the people of LaBelle in this town, while also following Frank Griffin's relentless mission to track down Roy Good, who has now settled in the town of LaBelle, right, with these people. So it really is kind of a parallel story throughout the series, though of course a lot more time is spent on LaBelle, but it's always that constant kind of looming threat of Frank Griffin, and I love the way that they show us his story leading up then towards the end of the series, I guess, when everything kind of comes to a head. So this ultimately makes for a familiar revenge tale centered around Roy Good and Frank Griffin, who are, I would argue, are two main players in this story. But it also presents a very unique set of characters and circumstances around this kind of revenge tale, which translates to a thrilling, intriguing, and refreshing story throughout the entire series. And I feel like, again, a really great tale of revenge, like I said, between Roy Good and Frank Griffin. But it's because of these circumstances of the town of LaBelle, which then also brings out some really great characters that get some really great development throughout the series. And they're kind of in the background to this main story, but at times they're in the forefront. So it is really interesting the way that they decide to show this story and decide to show these really great characters at either, kind of at the center of the story, but also the supporters kind of around that. So a really, like I said, refreshing, intriguing, thrilling story throughout the series. So overall, my thoughts with non-spoilers, right? So with the help from great performances from its well-rounded cast, the breathtaking cinematography and direction choices, and also the unique writing and kind of fresh take, this miniseries does a great job at crafting a fresh and entertaining take on the extremely familiar Western genre, while at times it does suffer from unbalanced pacing and uneven character focus / development. So that's kind of my overall log line, if you will, of the series. We have really great performances from its well-rounded cast, breathtaking cinematography and direction just throughout the entire series, really great. And then also the unique and fresh writing, right, that gives it kind of a fresh feel to the genre, as I said. But my two biggest negatives for this one were the unbalanced pacing and at times the uneven character development and focus throughout the 7 episodes. So this is where I will give you guys a spoiler warning, because now I want to talk about, not everything here is going to be based around spoilers, but I just don't want to spoil, any of the smaller or bigger things as I talk here. So this is the spoiler warning for the series if you haven't seen it yet. All right, so now into that. So great performances throughout. I just want to touch on this a little bit more. So Jeff Daniels and Merritt Wever. Now, and I love this too, because this, series came out in 2017, and this gives us kind of an ability of hindsight, right? And an opportunity to look back at what the awards gave this series, and then kind of talk about if I agree with that or not. Usually when a series just comes out, you're kind of speculating on what they would do at an award show and stuff like that. But this one, we already know what happened. So Jeff Daniels and Merritt Wever took home Emmys for their performances in the series. And I think Jeff Daniels definitely deserved this. I think he gave the best performance in the series for sure. Now, Merritt Wever, I will say, and she's from The Walking Dead, at the time of the Emmys when she won this award, I was just so happy for her, because she did play kind of an underutilized character in The Walking Dead. But I really was happy for her that she was able to get this role and do this well. And I really do think that she did a great job in the terms of her performance. Though, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think her character was a little flawed in some aspects. But again, I'll get to that later, but I don't think I would fault Merritt Wever for those weaknesses of her character, if you will. So they took home Emmys. I think they both deserve them. Looking back at it, Merritt Wever and Penelope Cruz, I thought at the time, Penelope Cruz from American Crime Story, I thought at the time that one was maybe a little bit sketchy, right? I wasn't sure, because I saw American Crime Story, I saw Penelope Cruz, I actually did a really great job. But now seeing this, I have to say, I think Merritt Wever did deserve it over her. And like I said, Jeff Daniels, best performance of the series, coming from Newsroom. I loved him in The Looming Tower as well. It was crazy, because at the Emmys, he got nominated for supporting actor and lead actor in a limited series from The Looming Tower and Godless, respectively. And he is just amazing. So he was really great in this. Also, I want to highlight Scoot McNairy. He is just a really underrated actor, in my opinion. He just had a very small role, I guess a cameo of sorts, in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's about a 5-minute role, but he does really great in that. His voice and his mannerisms on screen are just so recognizable, at least to me, that I've seen him in a lot of stuff. He was just also in True Detective Season 3, which I believe he got snubbed at the Emmys this year for supporting actor. I think he did an amazing job in that. And then he was also on *Halt and Catch Fire* for a few seasons as well. But he did an amazing job in this series. Although, again, at times I felt like his character was a little bit underappreciated. I think he still did the best with what he was given. Michelle Dockery was really great. I honestly have never seen her in anything before this, and I thought she was still great. Thomas Brody Sangster, he was a standout for me for sure amongst this cast. The only things that I've really seen him in are the Maze Runner series. And let me tell you, I mean, he gives a totally different performance than he does in those movies in this, and he is fantastic in this role. And I think his character is one of the best written as well. Really great. So, fabulous direction and cinematography choices throughout, as I said before. This series just looked visually appealing on screen, and I feel like it perfectly captured the tone and environment that they were going for. I also want to highlight the set design and costumes. They just look so authentic to the time. And honestly, just the whole thing, and I loved in the finale too, where kind of the dust was blowing and all that stuff. I feel like they did a really good job in those small details here and there. I have to say, I think I noticed like maybe a couple times where things may have been inconsistent, and that was with the dialogue mainly. I'm just not sure if that's the way they would speak at that time. But other than those like very small little things, I think they did an amazing job at providing this kind of immersive experience into the 1880s Southwestern America. I thought it was really, really great in terms of that. And I think the cast also did a good job adjusting to that. The accents, I think, were all really believable, especially Jeff Daniels. I mean, I thought he did a really great job. I saw this as well where he said he never rode a horse before this series, and he had to like learn to ride a horse. I'm sure a lot of the actors did for his performance in this, and he looks so believable in it. It's just really awesome. So my next thing is a fresh take on the Western genre. So I think there's a lot of Westerns out there, but I think this one sets itself apart with the focus on characters and places we rarely see, if nothing else. You know, I think the writing itself is unique. I think the kind of character development, the way this story is told for a Western is also a little unique. But just like the focus on characters and places that we don't usually see, just in itself makes this a fresh take on the genre. So first off, powerful and strong women. We usually don't see that in a lot of these Westerns. Now, you know, usually in these Westerns, you have like that one woman who's this really strong, powerful character that you're kind of rooting for, right? The kind of badass woman character. But in this, it's like all the women are that, right? And I just really like that spin on things. And again, that's not something that you usually see. Like, you maybe see one in a Western like that, and then the rest are kind of these brutish men. And in this, I just feel like it's a group of women. It's almost the entire population of the widows in LaBelle that are all powerful and strong. And it really does make sense. I don't think it's really a heavy-handed thing or forced at all. Because like they lost their husbands, like they are forced into this situation where they have to be strong, where they have to accept certain responsibilities that women in other Western shows and stories would not necessarily have to accept. So I really like the fresh take. Also, it's not just the powerful women, but it's also the damaged men. These are characters that we don't always see, especially with Bill McNew played by Scoot McNairy. That character, I felt like when do we see that really, right? I don't know. I feel like really good. I mean, that's pretty much the stereotypical Western guy that you'll see. Frank Griffin, a somewhat stereotypical villain in a Western, but again, I just felt like the Damaged Men was also a really great one. We also see a very small role, but it is a character in the show where one of them has gone crazy. He was the only survivor of the mining accident, and again, I don't think that's something that we necessarily spend a lot of time with in Westerns, so I thought that was great. And then also they show the Black community. I'm not sure if, and I don't watch a ton of Westerns, I'm not an expert or anything, and I'm not sure if they do show the Black community and the Black population at this time in a lot of Westerns, but either way, I feel like they spent quite a lot of time on it in this series, and the way it all wraps up in the finale is actually obviously, you know, horrifying the way it plays out with all of them dying, or almost all of them dying. But I feel like the way that they brought that back and actually made them a focal point of the story, I thought was really great too. So now to my negatives, my couple negatives for this one. So unbalanced pacing throughout the series. I thought, and this is to me, right? This in my opinion. I'm sure maybe some people enjoyed every single minute of every episode, and and I'm glad that you did. But to me, episodes 4 and 5 just seem very slow and elongated. These two episodes in particular, to me, seem to drag a lot, whereas the others went by almost very fast. Like episode 1, I felt like maybe a little bit slow, but you're kind of getting into it. Episode 2 was really stellar. The pacing was really great. 3 as well. And then 6 and 7 were like, 7's almost balls to the wall at the very end of that, right? Just like crazy, fast-paced kind of action stuff towards the second half of episode 7. But I felt like episode 4 and 5 were just a little bit, like I think you could have almost combined both of them into just one episode, and both episodes were still pretty long at like an hour, and I think the other one was an hour and 10 if I'm not mistaken. So it just seemed like some of these episodes, in particular these two, just seemed to drag on, whereas others were actually really great and they didn't. So I think maybe just tighten up the run times to some of these episodes, or cut an episode out entirely, and I think it would have been even better. Like I said, maybe combine what you saw in episode 4 and 5 into one episode, make that an hour and 10 minutes, and then, kind of go from there. So, and again, it was kind of a character development, furthering this story, telling those flashbacks. So they weren't needed, but again, I've just felt like some of the sequences could have been shortened up, tighten up the run times to some of these episodes a little bit, and it would also make it a little bit more easier to watch. I think for a lot of people to commit to an hour and 10, the premiere and the finale are both an hour and 20 minutes. So, for some people, they just don't have that time to watch an hour and 20 minutes of an episode. It probably takes them 2 nights to finish that, right? And so I totally understand that, and I think maybe just cut it up a little bit. All right, uneven character focus and development. This is my other one, and I'm not sure that I don't think I have a full argument for this necessarily, but it's just something that I noticed at times throughout the series. So to me, I felt like some characters were somewhat one note and weren't developed as much. And the main character I think of when I say this is Mary Agnes, Merritt Weaver's character. Again, I felt like her character was good. I think Merritt Weaver portrayed her really well, but I think at times it just kind of lacked development. I felt like, at least for the first 5 or so episodes of this series, very one note, right? Very, a specific type of character. And except for one scene off the top of my head where she goes back to the church, when they're doing construction on the church, and she ends up helping some of the women. She like smiles at one of them. That's like the only time in the entire series where she, we see this kind of feeling of humanity in her a little bit, or at least that she's, kind of trying to, welcome the other women of the town. Like she's always super against them. Even her girlfriend, right, at times, mistakenly, of course, as we find out later in the episodes. But anyways, again, I feel like that character could have been developed a little bit more. Maybe show a little bit more of flashbacks. I think we got a couple of her, but overall, just maybe develop that character a little bit more. And I think Merritt Weaver, I think her performance was really great in that role. But again, same with Walking Dead. Like she never really had a lot of opportunity to show that depth. And I really think she does have that. So it'd be really great to see her as an actress show that. And then also Bill. I thought he was just, at the beginning, he was almost her main character besides Roy. And then he really faded into the background here in episodes like 5, 6, 4 as well. Just kind of unfortunate because I love that character and his focus. And he got a lot of flashback at the beginning. But then he just kind of faded, and he just really wasn't developed. Again, a little one note. And then my other thing, though, with this is like, okay, some of these characters are undeveloped. They're kind of minor characters. But other smaller characters got a lot more focus, I feel like. And one of the main things that I had a problem with in this one was the Greg character, right? The J.T. Greg, the journalist guy. He got a lot of screen time and a lot of focus here. Not necessarily any flashbacks or background explanation, but I just thought with his character that it was just a little bit too much focus if you're not going to give that to Mary Agnes and Bill, who are much bigger characters. I also felt like Alice got a lot of flashbacks and a lot of background explanation, as I said. And, maybe it's too much, but she's also, Roy's kind of love interest, I guess, if you will, in this. And so I think some of that was deserved, some of it maybe a little bit too much. And also Whitey, he got a lot of story and a lot of focus, especially with Luis from Blackdom, right, and that whole storyline there. And maybe that was too much as well, that you could argue. So Roy and Frank got a lot of focus and a lot of screen time. I mean, it's really the majority of the series, but they were essentially the two main characters. So I think that was, okay. But again, maybe you use some of that time, you split it up and use it on some of these more underdeveloped characters. And at times, I will say the powerful / strong women characters in this were used as a backdrop rather than the focal points. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is a negative for the series, but maybe it's not as advertised. I feel like some people going into this were really expecting, like, the main character to be a woman and all the main characters to be women. While Roy and Frank actually get, like, the majority of screen time and focus throughout the series. So I just felt like maybe that was a little bit of in hindsight, right, looking back at it, maybe you could have spent a little bit more time on the women of LaBelle, and maybe focus a little bit more on them, for sure. But, all right, so now I just want to talk about a couple things to end off here. So Frank Griffin and Roy Good's story. I thought this was just a really great, intriguing story throughout the entire series. The use of flashbacks throughout to explain their past together was really great, and specific Roy's past. But we also see some flashbacks for Frank as well. And I thought those were really great too. And I like the way they tell this story too, because we almost start... I don't want to say we start at the end, but we start at a certain point in the story where we don't really know much about them or how any of their relationship came to be, and that's what they use the flashbacks for, and I thought it was really great. And at times it really is a father-son relationship between Roy and Frank, since Roy had no family, he had no father, and he's adopted by the woman at the church. And I thought that it was just a really great story. And I think Frank Griffin, a truly evil man, yet he at times had some heavy-hearted moments. And I think this series purposely showed us that, because we kind of saw Roy was on this path to become Frank, yet he was able to see and understand his kind of genuine evil side. And those little moments and glimpses of that heavy-heartedness that we saw of Frank, that is what Roy kind of tapped into a little bit more and actually became that. So I feel like Roy wasn't like the other criminals in the group. He was different, and I think Frank recognized that. And I just really love the dynamic between Frank Griffin and Roy Good. I think Jack O'Connell and Jeff Daniels had a great chemistry on screen as well between the two. All right, so my finale episode discussion. So I want to discuss a little bit about this. I thought overall it was a satisfying conclusion to the series. I do have a few problems with it, though. My first problem is the whole Frank thing and saying, "I've seen my death." That was, like, I think it was said at least 10 times in the series, right? That was, like, Frank's whole thing in the entire series going through, is him saying, "I've seen my death, this ain't it," right? And so he almost, like, didn't fight back at times because he thinks he saw his death, right, play out, and he knows that this person is not going to kill him in this situation, right? And we don't really ever get a flashback of when he saw his death or how that actually came to be, if I'm not mistaken. And the way this plays out in the finale of him, saying, "Well, I've seen my death, this ain't it," again, he says that to Roy, and then Roy ends up killing him. I just thought, like, I would have liked to see something else with that, and actually see something come out of nowhere, like Truckee ends up shooting him, and then that is the death that he saw, right, at the hands of, a Native American or something like that. I thought that's the way they were going, but then it ends up that Roy just kills him, and, he saw wrong, as Roy says. So I just thought that was a little bit underdeveloped. Whitey's death was really lackluster. I've seen some reactions to the series now. A lot of people feel the same way. You spend a lot of time on that character. He's a beloved character to the fans, and the audience of it, and then he gets killed like that. I don't know. I just felt like there was a lack of closure as well at the end. They had the little kind of burial scene at the very end for him, but I just thought, could have been better with that type of character that he was. And also the Quicksilver mining group, that was a big storyline throughout the series, and at the very end here, Roy just basically shoots down a couple and they give up, and they just stay out of LaBelle, and never even come. So I thought, again, that was a little bit lackluster in the whole way that played out, especially in episode 2 when they sign over the town. And then that never really came to be towards the end of the series. So those are just a couple of problems, but some great action sequences in this one and heroic moments for the ladies of LaBelle. Just a really satisfying and exhilarating experience, I would say, in about the second half of the finale episode. And I will say, I think the heroic moments for the ladies, I think we're actually pretty realistic. I think some people could say, well, would those women really be able to defeat Frank Griffin's men? And especially after, they set up Frank Griffin's group as being this, just, massive, unconquerable, group of men that were just, so skilled at fighting that nobody could ever stop them, right? And so, given that kind of development of the group, it just may seem to some people like it was unrealistic that the women would be able to do that. But to me, I think it was actually pretty realistic because they had the advantage. They had the height advantage. They were fortified against Frank's men. And they also knew that they were coming. And I think that's a big difference within this fight to, Creed, Blackdom, and some of these other places where they just they went on a rampage throughout the towns and just killed everybody, right? And that they were successful in doing so. But this time, LaBelle knew that they were coming, right? And also, I mean, you have, Mary Agnes and Alice up on the roof there, scouting almost. So I feel like that was definitely, added to kind of the realisticness of this and that Frank's group really could be taken down. If people just knew that they were coming and they were set up and prepared well for it, I think they would have had a pretty good chance at it, and that's what we see in this one. Also, a great send-off and conclusion for Roy's story. The last visual of the series is just really awesome with him on the horse looking out onto the hills. That was really awesome. All right, guys, so to wrap up this one, two things I loved about the series. One is the great performances throughout. Again, Jeff Daniels and Merritt Weaver, I think, were highlights, but also Scoot McNairy, Michelle Dockery, Thomas Brody Sangster, really great. Number two, fresh and unique writing and story. Like I said, a fresh take on the Western genre, which I felt like really makes this one stand out well compared to other, shows and movies in the genre for sure. One thing I didn't like, again, was the unbalanced pacing and the elongated run times for some of these episodes. Again, I feel like you maybe even could have cut one whole episode out of this one, and it still would have been just as good, and maybe cut down the run times of the premiere and finale, make it a little bit more digestible for the audience. But my favorite episode then, I gotta go with the finale episode, Homecoming. Although episode 2, The Ladies of LaBelle, is very close for me. Really great episodes we got out of this one, but that finale was just exhilarating throughout almost the whole thing, but particularly the second half for sure. But anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on Godless on the miniseries on Netflix. Again, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this series if you have seen it. What do you think of it? And I know, maybe some people watched this almost 2 years ago now. But what do you think of the awards and how all that went as well? Remember, this one got nominated for Outstanding Limited Series. So, really, really great job at the awards, though it didn't win. Jeff Daniels, Merritt Weaver took home the Emmys. And just a really good series, though. I think this is really worth watching for anyone. So, again, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. And we'll see you in my next review.